to our next speakers in this Kaustinen ICH Academy. We are so happy to hear about this topic that you are presenting today. So welcome Jurgita Zvinklyte. You can make Thank you, and Matti Palonen. Welcome.
So we are going to present today about Lithuanian Sutartine. We both are in the band called Honeypot, and we're going to perform here in Kaustinen. And we talk about Sutartine because it's a very important Lithuanian kind of singing style, or whole tradition to what we do. And technically more we want to talk about, not overall, it's very hard like big theme to talk about it, but we want to like give you context what is Sutartine and how generally people work with them in the popular culture, music, and lead to how we try to do differently or work with the challenges of this singing style. Has anyone ever heard about Sutartine before?
One.
There you go. So Lithuania in total has in part of UNESCO terrible heritage 4 things, and from music is only Sutartine, and it was inscribed in 2010. So it's like more than 10 years, and so this whole copy paste, but I'm not gonna. You can find it in UNESCO descriptions, the same with the video and everything. But it's just an image of the text, but we're gonna talk more specifically about what is, because sometimes the more you read, it's like it's hard to imagine what it is. So this is Lithuania. So it's below Latvia. It's between Poland and Belarus. And Sutartine is only found in this territory, and talk about this territory, and within the territory there's different Sutartine styles as well, so it's not like very strict area, and mostly we're going to talk about, so I would say, like, imagine if we're going from north to the south, Sutartine is very like variety of singing, playing, dancing, and variety of different structures of Sutartine. From the north is very like more intense, more secunda sound, and is going kind of fading away with more like similar to simple singing, but it still keeps the structure. So it's like what we're going to talk, and what we were more interested is and what we working with archives is more north part of Sutartine region. So it's not the elements I'm going to talk next in the slide. It's talk about whole region of the Sutartine, but there could be certain elements in different part of Sutartine. Does it make sense? Like if they just collect in one, but actually it's not. You cannot point one and it's like they say using all the elements. So what the elements all? So there you go. Let's talk about structure. So let's talk about singing Sutartine. It's mostly known as singing tradition, and it has a structure of trejine, keturine, and dvejine, which is 3-some, 4-some, and 2-some. And they refer to singing, how many singers are involved. And so roughly 3-somes is style of singing in canon, but even this canon, very strict canon, is in the same time sings only 2 singers. So there's one breathing, because it's so tight that if you able to sing, and we do sing sometimes, you cannot sing for a long time, 3 and 2, because it's kind of constant give and back like a circle. It's like a sense of circles.
So you need room to breathe.
Yeah, so you need room to breathe. Keturine as well as trejine works like this. The first one starts, she's the collector, and in the singing there's a like text. One part of the song is a text, another part is refrain. and in the second half with the refrain singing, another one joins, and it's kind of half like meets like they together like this, and it's kind of closed circle going around. Foursome is two in couples. One sings the story all the time, another one only refrain. So it breaks the refrain and singing, another one repeats, so it's back and forth. And twosome is kind of weird and unique. It's not found in all. So threesome is most popular. You can find most of it. Foursome believes is oldest way of singing of all the structures, and twosome nobody knows. It's a new thing or older because you rarely refrains appear sometimes, but it could be like we singing the same, almost same text in the same time. So we go breathe and sing, and it's usually mostly clashing, mostly seconds happening, and we're gonna talk about that second thing. So syncopation, rhythm is very important. You cannot want to be slower than other singer. You have to be very strict, and have lots of syncopation, rhythmical patterns where like you start like one rhythm and it could be the mirroring another rhythm like backwards, and then you kind of overlap each other and it creates this syncopation like feeling to it. So have to be good in rhythm. Interferation, diaphony is type of tuning. So traditionally in an old archives is talking about has its own tuning. How to say, it's not Western. So it's like all he's gonna talk more, but roughly let's say almost whole tones in between because of clashing. Because Sutartine needs the sense of buzz. The more buzz, the more like clashing happens between two voices, the better. Like singer says, we finally get along, because I forgot to tell what Sutartine means. It means to get along, to be in tune. So for them, the more clashing, the more it's like, oh, we did it, like it worked out. So refrains, I'm going to talk typical, many of them is lost meaning, some of them we can track the understanding. One researcher believes they are kind of old, condensed meanings, which we lost understood. So words like lila, liduta, rateleles, dauno, lilo, chuto, trapo, lingo, trapetele, yatu, yatotele, lingo, ratatodo, below, silosa, luto. So it could be, some of this like imitating the sound of instruments. Some of them it could be, concentrated meaning of invoking rain or something like that. So sung by women and played by man it's very kind of believed, and mostly it's recorded that women are singing, because Sutartine is not only singable, it's playable. They play instruments, and singers as well dance. We're going to talk about syncretism a bit more, but there's always exception to the rule. Of course, there's sometimes man could join. The problem with the man in Sutartine and singing is there are too low voices. They cannot sing. You have to, if the man joins, they have to rise one tone. They have to be in the same level. So man voices are too low to be a man singing Sutartine. And again, it's not too high, it's somewhere in the middle. So if you're able to meet in the middle, you can get the sound, the clashing sound. So it's very similar emotion. It's like they sing about all kind of work, other things like type of like weddings and all, but they never like very like folk songs has some kind of emotional stories and everything. It's very don't have it. They very kind of primitive text, and it'll be very simple. Like we change a couple words. Sometimes you change just one word when the collector gives the text, and it's like full of refrains and other things. But it's kind of, for me, when I sing, it's all felt very spiritual. It's like had the sound of like very respect, and the way the singers describe this style of singing, they never call it songs. They call it chants, like hymns. So it is like specific understanding. That's not a singing, like a song, folk song. It's Sutartine, its own thing. So syncretism. So we see those dancers go in circle. So yeah, this kind of, as a culture, could be dance or singing, and this dancing usually is like simple things, like you go in some kind of circle or doing like a cross with the hands. Sometimes they have like simple walking, but they have this very specific limping, which, like this, when you walk as well, is part of creating rhythm while singing. Face to face, it's very important to remember that for the pop culture. They keep tuning right here, so they kind of using, so voices mouth to mouth is very close, so they kind of in that. And vocal timbres, for people forget a lot dialects. It's like chesty voice, and you have to aware of where the dialect is like O and R, like vowels. It's very important the way you pronounce it. To, like this kind of.
And it's also very soft too.
So it's again interpretation. Some people want to like sing very loud, never choir singing. Like it's somewhere in between. It's kind of loud, but it's not screaming. So it's not, you cannot sing like the mountain style because it's in closed space. So that's, you got it, yeah. We're going to show an example a bit later, but to keep in mind all those structures. So now the collection happens, and what's with the collections? So we have the Slavinos who, very important, he collected all is possible before him, he collected, and so those 3 books released in 1950 somewhere, with all possible collections. After that, they might find a couple more, but basically it's all collected and presented. You can find those online. It's easily accessible. It's on PDF. And the thing when you collect songs like that is you do so many things. For example, it's all collected in Western notations, and there's very, very few archival sounds, and as well many who collected during the 30s. Majority of them is one take. There was or like only one surviving singer. So it's like she tried to remember what she did when she was young, and then like as well like they get this sometimes ideas like, oh, it's only some of the Sutartines, for example, being sang. No, I talk about very strict structure, but there's some that have like so-called non-symmetrical Sutartines, like things like could be there. Sometimes there is a rule, but there is rules to exceptions. So it's sometimes they dismiss certain Sutartine and say, oh, it's probably wrong, but in reality it's not. And and recording. So for us as well, important is a little guy called Augusto Robert-Niemi, who is a Finnish guy who came to Lithuania. He was traveled several times. So in 1912 he recorded Sutartine singing from that north part of Lithuania in collaboration with a local priest, Sabaliauskas, and only recently got these recordings in Lithuania. They were all in Finnish archives all these years. Never been accessible. Most researchers didn't know about them. So they're gonna be online in Lithuania finally this October. Only gonna release. So that's kind of interesting thing, and there's lots of research about it. So basically that's the point. And Matti is going to talk about more about scale structure, which is very important for us.
Okay, so in an earlier slide we had this term interferential diaphony, and so here we can kind of talk about it. So diaphony obviously is a type of polyphony, but even if there's 3 singers, 4 singers, it's always diaphony. There's only the 2 sounds happening at once. And normally it's the way that the melody is structured. So 2 people will be singing different melodies, and that the way that they'll clash they'll usually produce seconds. But what will happen is that their scale intervals, as you can see, this researcher, Rytis Ambrozavicius, did a lot of analysis of the wax cylinder recordings, and he found that rather than having like whole tones and half tones, major and minor scales, the entire scale is these intervals of, he measured 172 to 180 cents, so like slightly flat of a major second. And we further believe that it's actually not intended to be a range, but intended to be actually every interval is equal. But obviously, because it's a singing tradition and a folk tradition, then there's no way to. They didn't exactly have electronic tuners that they were tuning themselves. They just kind of they aim for this kind of clash. And so what happens in, like, you can see that they have this aesthetic of this vocal clashing sound. So in Western harmony, we think of we have kind of two concepts, dissonance and harmony. So dissonance is like this kind of too close or whatever, and then the harmony is just like these pure tones, or pure intervals. But there's kind of something in between that, and so what happens when you have like the sort of the alto range of a female voice, you get these, and you're singing intervals of around 175 cents or whatever. What will happen is that when you're tuning an instrument and you can sort of count the beats between the two frequencies to see how out of tune it is. Here, what will happen is that the beats will create their own buzzing, and so in this proper range, what you're going to get is that kind of actually a psychoacoustic phenomenon where you'll kind of feel the buzzing more than you hear it even. So this, Ambrozavicius or somebody has coined the phrase roughness, or the term roughness, because it's like dissonance is like when the intervals are too close together, and then harmony or whatever is when they're kind of far apart. And so in this range, we call it roughness, and so that's the interferential portion of interferential diaphony. So rough, close seconds. And then what he also found in his studies, and the last speaker kind of talked about this as well, is that in any recordings in the 1908 or 1930s, you get these tunings, but then in the recent urban revival, they were reading off of sheet music and stuff like that, so you lose that, and when when you're so used to Western classical music, then you can't help but like kind of revert to that, and it's very hard to sing the proper intervals.
Yeah.
And we can actually demonstrate. Yeah. So we can
have the same guys.
So play just your low note, and here's what the clashing kind of feels like. So you can kind of feel it in your ear rather than hear it. And then we can play a short Sutartine. We'll have a concert tomorrow in London, where we're gonna.
You're hiding, I was seeing.
Yeah, sing.
Enough intrigue to come. So, okay. Some other revivals. So, bass called David Vichina, who was one of the main person who put all this work to UNESCO. So, the traditional Sutartine singing. So it's like small groups of women. Like this group of Triska Droyce and the Diva performed for many years. They tried to really work and trying to sing like they believe like sing enough to be making Sutartine well. Then there's like other approach singing baby mixed groups like Kulgrinda where everyone's allowed, it could be man, woman, they get the drum to keep the rhythm, but the thing is there's lots of people don't like be unhappy about it, especially traditionalists, because it's like never been recorded a drum thing and just kind of lose it because it already has rhythmic. And yeah, and then there's obviously, as many things happens with the rival music, lots of pop and academic approaches, like lots of really beloved by minimalist composers. They love to work with the material because some of the material is so like a pure minimalist composer work anyway. Like some of them so complex. And curious to the practice what's happening now is like the folklore ensembles. Like I was part of it as well, and then we always kind of go some Sutartine festivals, which is like similar looking like in this, where we gather some kind of mountains and we perform like small group, and then we sometimes share together. And music and entertainment, when folk music, then of course they find all kind of variation with it. And new thing we have now is become like a therapeutic thing, where it's like you're not about performing at all, and it's just gather one time thing, and it could be like sometimes like certain marathons, so it's like always involve the drums as well. So it's kind of people just feel less exposed, I believe, because when you traditionally it should be like one person to one, it's really exposed, and if you miss the rhythm and miss the singing, it's really out there, and being in group probably is like most comfortable thing. And yeah, so contemporary music, what they do, so there's lots of simple ways, just you sing from those sheets, Western notation, sing the music, and there's like just overlay on top of your singing. Lots of electronic music albums, that's way where they ask those Sutartine singers, like folk groups, where like to sing, and then they just do some variation. They sometimes appear, disappear, but there is kind of is there. Simply sometimes solo singers using pre-recorded technology, so you can try to play your own voice with like loop pedal, because you can't technically it's not Sutartine if you sing by yourself. So you kind of want to have at least a second voice. But of course there's a monophonic singing, just becomes Sutartine as a song. So sometimes even believe there's talking about monophonic singing is like the two kind of camps, where some believe that Sutartine either was Sutartine very wide, exposed in Lithuania, and just some areas become turned to like monophonic singing with refrain, because there's lots of songs with refrains as its own, or it was opposite, was like there was refrain singing and then somehow appeared to be into polyphonic singing. We don't know. Using voice as instrument and Sutartine, like your voice and instrument could talk to it. This is how modern people do, and then sometimes some like pop singers, like folk singers, they like to sing their own folk song, and then sometimes put some refrain elements of Sutartine and things like that. So it's kind of from the structure to totally going and fading away. So Matti, we're going to talk about this.
Okay, so with Honeypaw, what we're trying to kind of move towards being a
5 minutes.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
So
So-
last slide.
we've been studying Finnish music, we've been studying Lithuanian music, but we're trying to become more of a festival type band. So in order to take this tuning and into and also include Western tuning, what we'll do is like we have the 172 to 180 kind of range. So what I've done is taken a perfect fifth and divided it into 175 cents, and that way then you can have harmonies using the 1 and the 5, even though there's absolutely no evidence that the Sutartine singers cared at all about a perfect fifth. It's just like if they happen to hit it, great, but the structure isn't based at all on that sort of like functional harmony kind of thing. And then so we've because we were talking about the issue with men and women using their chest voice in the same range, so basically we've decided that if Jurgita can sing as low as she can and I can sing as high as I can with still the folky timbre, then we can pretty much do everything in the key of B,
That's how
like
that's
minor or
that's the
super.
key.
And then we're also working heavily with this researcher Niemi, who collected stuff in 1912. He found a lot of, like, his initial idea was to find similarities between Finnish and Lithuanian culture, but he found that there wasn't really enough collection in Lithuania, so he collected these wax cylinders, and then so we've used
First
those.
went for like just notes, just the text, because he's interested in text, and he was very excited about Sutartine because the ones he had before found Lithuanians was too elaborate, too like later folk, and then this is like very very archaic based on the text. You could feel it's archaic. So he found for them connections.
Yeah, and then so we basically used his ideas to kind of research further connections, like, you know, for example, I guess that we can end on this example of the image in both cultures: leave one tree or branch standing, that is for the cuckoo bird's perch. And so that's a good example of like very
Yeah.
so,
We have little
yeah.
example from his recordings where this is a bit problematic because when he collected there was only one, actually he found a bunch of singers, but the one he was very excited was Ones Mėgienė, and she was the only surviving from her village who knew the songs, and to able to sing it properly she taught us a preschool for the same region, and to sing together, so it's like you can hear this they're singing his voice more than the woman's can hear him back.
Yeah.
Many of it, but this it's tricky to work with them. But
Yeah.
it's exhausting. Thanks so much. So here you go.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. What was the time for your gig tomorrow?
It's around 6.
I will tell.
I would love to hear that. Yeah.
So tomorrow 6:15 in Nordgrenshallen and Kaustinen and 10 p.m. in Kestikivari.
Ah, wonderful.
So tomorrow we're gonna do more acoustic with the more skuldučiai, more pieni kantele, like Lithuanian kanteles.
Yeah.
And another totally different set will be with our approach more like with pedals, electronic music, like synthesize. It's not electronic. It's synthesizing a bit our instruments in Thursday.
And the band is Honeypot.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's almost time for the next presentation, but would anyone have a fast question here, or should we move forward?
No question.
Maybe I have afterwards. I would love to talk with you about this Niemi. I'm very fascinated of this topic, so hopefully we have time to get back to that question later. But so now we would move on, and we have now for a short presentation related to the festival's topic of the year, and a lot of experiences actually here from Kaustinen. So always this last section of this ICH Academy is related to Kaustinen more precisely. And then we move to the museum exhibition. So if you want after this presentation to follow me there, I can show you around there and tell more about the things about the Kaustinen UNESCO element. But first we have now Antti Kautonen, welcome, and we can find your PowerPoint slide from here.
Yes, hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
Also my notes used to be here.
No way. Oh, did someone took them accidentally? Hopefully we could find them.
Yeah, I probably did.
Oh, yeah, great.
Okay. I would have wanted to hear a cover version.
Yeah. Good. No, ja tosta vaan
No,
muuta.
okay.
It's yours.
Okay.
Mä vielä sanon
This is
tuolla.
probably also yours.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Well, we can have them here a bit. Maybe the MS here probably. Yeah, but now we were here Kaustinen fiddle playing and migration. So welcome Antti,
Okay.
the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so hello and greetings from the Migration History Research Project here in central Ostrobothnia. My name is Antti Kautonen. Sadly no singing or dancing or playing for me. So in recent years there has been a great push to gather the stories of people emigrating from this region, which means going through endless passport records, travel documents and books and trying to find old photos and memories of those who left. I'm the project coordinator for Kaustinen's Migration History Project, and I'm one of those performing a deep dive into local history taking place both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. And fiddle playing is synonymous with the town of Kaustinen. And as the old saying goes, in Kaustinen even the rocks are playing. I presume that must mean an echo of a song played with an old violin, not faint but strong. Even as you are sitting here at the Kansanmusiikki-instituutti, try saying that quickly, you can hear the violin melody in your mind, I'm sure. The sound of the song permeates everything within a 5-mile radius of the festival area. So leaving everything behind but the songs. Looking back centuries or decades, songs and music and stories set to music have been a part of this place. In that sense, it's only natural that people leaving this region to find a new life in the golden land of opportunity, America, took the songs and the sounds and the stories with them. Often that was the only thing they had, apart from the clothes that they wore and the bread that they had packed along with them. In these modern times, traveling is almost second nature, as well as sending messages around the world and expecting an instant reply or reaction. But you only need to think back a number of generations to find a world where a word of mouth or a long traveling letter convinced thousands of people to leave their small circles, pack their bags and head out west for a life they hoped would be better. And the migration wave of the 1800s and early 1900s meant that 2,000 people left Kaustinen, and according to the records that were kept, and considering that around the turn of the century only 3,000 people even lived here. It's not difficult to find immigration stories from this village or find descendants that have their roots here. And sometimes photos or postcards have survived, sometimes letters that claim that in America one could earn a year's wages in just a month. I've read those words many times myself, holding letters that are 140 years old. They still have an impact. In the New World, or on their way there, travelers from Kaustinen passed the time by singing songs from their homeland and hometown, with the skills and traditions they had learned at the village halls of Kaustinen, passing them along to newer generations just like at home. Social gatherings meant that somebody picked up a fiddle, as it was easier to transport than a grand piano. Factory workers, miners, loggers, those who found work in America or Canada, socialized with the people they worked with because they spoke the same language or knew the language of song and music. And speaking of few words of Swedish was often the best they could do before the mess of Finnish and English turned into something called Finglish that could help you manage in the world. It's not difficult to find names from Kaustinen listed in the list of players in dramatic plays held at workers' halls in towns such as Astoria or Red Lodge or Fitchburg, all places that attracted people from here. Immigrants formed bands and toured America playing the kind of music that was increasingly popular in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And they weren't averse to a bit of dancing, which was not a given in those times. And the times could be hard. Economic downturns dictated whether it made sense to stay in the place where you had traveled and made your home. If the mines closed, you had to choose between finding new work or heading back to Kaustinen. Often a migrant's fortune depended on if he could provide for the family, and illness or work-related accidents can have cut that short. Then it was up to the community to help, if they could. At workers' halls, events were held to raise funds for a stricken individual, or to help families where the husband had died in an accident. At those events, music played an important role to gather people, to gather help, and to alleviate the sadness. Migrant life was documented not only in newspapers and letters and people's memories, but also in song. The famous Finnish-American recording artist Arthur Kalander sang songs of immigrants in America, writing songs together with his wife Julia Varila from Red Lodge, and her parents came to America from Kaustinen. Their records were popular and sold all over the country. And a number of immigrant stories have an ending where one returned home seemingly empty-handed, but with something intangible and invaluable with them. For example, let's take the story of Artturi Peltokangas. He's a familiar name to a lot of festival goers as he used to perform here in the first years of the festival. Yrjö Artturi Peltokangas was born in East Dallas, Michigan around the turn of the century to immigrant parents, and his mother was from Kaustinen, while his father Sakarias was from Himalaya, the northern coast. And in time, he came back to Finland and settled in the village of Järvelä. And on his mother's side, there were several Jylhä relatives with a link to music. For example, Konsti Jylhä, another famous Kaustinen folk music performer. As the story goes, eventually Artturi got fed up with the boasting of his father-in-law regarding who does the work at the Åsi farm in Järvelä. And Artturi had said something to the tone of, well, I can hold my own as well, and left for Canada in 1925. The immigration quota legislation in those days meant that not everybody who wanted could enter the US immediately, so Artturi had to find work in Canada for a year before successfully crossing the border. You can see this is actually to Canada. He's got to Canada first and then to Michigan. But in Virginia, Minnesota, he found his uncle John, originally Juho Jylhä, who was not only a county clerk in Virginia, but also a musician, a fiddle player, and a choir singer, the son of Juho Jaakonpoika Jylhä, known as Pikku Lukkari, the little verger or sacristan, and a member of the touring Veikot choir of Finnish Americans. John Jylhä had also visited his homeland in the early 1920s, likely reminding Artturi of what waited in the West and giving him a reason to go west. Artturi worked and performed in America for about a decade, but due to the toughening conditions in the 1930s, he eventually got a passport and headed back home. We have his passport. It's perfectly preserved. And it's said that the only thing he brought back home instead of pockets full of money was an old violin he had found in America and the songs he had learned. And one of them used to be in the songbook of old Henry Ford, who was fond of folk music as well. And Artturi lived the rest of his life here in Kaustinen, often dreaming of taking a jet plane back to America, but that never happened again. And then Sanfred, the violin builder. As well as playing the fiddle, the Kaustinen fiddle tradition also includes building them. The story of Sanfred Tastula is a good example. He was a skilled craftsman and a migrant who first moved to America in 1905, and he spent his entire life building violins, having completed his first self-built instrument at the age of 14. It was not the best by a long way, but it gave me ideas from which I soon made 2 more, he said. And in 1950, when he was interviewed for the local paper in Montana, he said his mother was so tired of the constant wood shavings around the house that Sanford ended up burning the first 2 completed violins. But he also remarked that they simply hadn't been any good. But the third, however, was so good that he encouraged him to keep going. And by the age of 66, he had built 50 violins as well as an organ that he had left behind in Kaustinen. He lived here again for a short while. But then he moved to Red Lodge, Montana, back to America, and Sanford was called the Stradivarius of Bear Creek, often demonstrating his fiddle playing skills on his own equipment, including a double violin, which he joked could be turned around if one side got too hot while playing polka. And the violins he built were on display at the Red Lodge Festival of Nations each year, a happening that brought together the different people and difficult musical backgrounds of immigrants in Montana. And as the folk music festival was established here in Kaustinen in the late 1960s, the word of it traveled back to the West. You could say it mirrored the original message that had invited immigrants to North America. And this time they heard the call of their homeland and thought it was finally the time to return, even for a short visit. The granddaughter of Dr. Konsta Koski, a healer and chiropractic originally from Kaustinen, and Kansankoski told me that Konsta had often spoken of going back to Kaustinen. In 1971, he finally did. That's his home there. The country he had left in the early 1900s had changed a lot, became independent, but the music was still the same. And in his letters, Konsta reminisces of the impact Konsta Jurha's fiddle playing had on him after all these years away from home. And I will happily talk more about migration and Kaustinen traditions at the museum section of the building. But thank you for listening and thank you for paying attention.
Thank you.